you get to the ultra-exclusive WWE Main Eventers Club, you soon find out that the creative team will do everything within their power to have you avoid losing matches cleanly. Sure, you might take an L because the other guy cheated or some other circumstance that protects you, but rarely will you get beaten fair and square. Rarely, but not never, as everybody, even the tippity-top guys, eventually loses clean unless you're that Ultimate Warrior guy. Depending on the opponent, situation, follow-up, or lack thereof, these clean losses can be genuinely shocking. I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 shocking times major WWE stars lost clean. Join us! Number 10. The Undertaker vs. Vladimir Kozlov, February 27, 2009 SmackDown. The Foreign Menace is a well-worn pro wrestling archetype that WWE have implemented to varying degrees of success over the years. Because for every Yokozuna, there's a Ludwig Borga, and for every Rusev, a Vladimir Kozlov. WWE were initially very high on Kozlov after he got brought up to the main roster, with the Moscow Mauler squashing his way into the WWE title scene. Big Bad Vlad didn't win the big one, thank God, but his push continued and he was awarded a very rare and exceptionally clean victory over The Undertaker on the February 27, 2009 edition of SmackDown. Kozlov reversed Old School into a power slam and scored the pin. 1, 2, 3 right in the middle. No funny business whatsoever. What makes this one even more shocking is that, according to the Dead Man, Vince McMahon had designs on booking Kozlov as the man to break the streak at WrestleMania 25 shortly afterwards. Mercifully, cooler heads prevailed, and Shawn Michaels ended up beating Kozlov to earn his shot at the streak instead, which was the first time Vlad had ever been pinned in a one-on-one match. WWE soon gave up on Kozlov, as evidenced by his switch to ECW in the draft, making his victory over Taker an even bigger head-scratcher. Number 9. Triple H vs. Shelton Benjamin, March 29, 2004 Raw. Routinely touted as perhaps the best actual athlete in the much-vaunted Ohio Valley Wrestling class of 2000, Shelton Benjamin got to show flashes of his brilliance after being brought up in a tag team with Charlie Haas. Team Angle, or the world's greatest tag team, had a fruitful run on SmackDown before Benjamin was sent to Raw in the 2004 draft. Thrown right into the deep end on the red brand, Shelton was put in a main event singles match with Triple H the week after he was drafted. More than holding his own with the Cerebral Assassin in his Raw debut, Benjamin pulled off the incredible upset and got the W after a Stinger Splash and a roll-up. Now, there were some shenanigans at play here, as World Heavyweight Champion Chris Benoit counteracted Ric Flair's interference at ringside and distracted the game. His attention may have been on the floor, but Shelton beat him fair and true, giving Triple H a rare loss, especially for this era. Helmsley would have trouble figuring out a way to beat Benjamin in singles matches before finally getting his win in a beat-the-clock challenge on the final Raw of 2004. Number 8. John Cena vs. Justin Gabriel on the August 30th, 2010 Raw. Few wrestlers in WWE history enjoyed a main event run as long or as strong as John Cena. Over 5 years on from winning his first WWE title, the one-man merchandise machine was the main man in the company, and the booking protected him at all costs most of the time. This famously irked many when it came to the main event of SummerSlam 2010, where Super Cena survived a DDT on the concrete floor to rally and beat both Justin Gabriel and Wade Barrett, which pretty much finished off the Nexus as a viable threat. Gabriel did manage to score a measure of revenge 15 days later, however, when Nexus once again clashed with a WWE team in an elimination tag match on Raw. Cena and Orton were down 5-on-2 when Big Match John got rid of Heath Slater and then David Otunga. After making Otunga tap to the STF, however, Cena rolled right into Gabriel's 450 splash and got eliminated. I'm sure you'll all be shocked to learn that Cena wrestled and beat Gabriel cleanly in a singles match on Raw the following week. Number 7. Ric Flair vs. Rico on the September 16th, 2002 Raw. Look, we all love Rico, right? The guy was a hoot and did his utmost to make everything he was given entertaining, and I'd go as far as to say he's my favorite stylist in WWE history. Easily top 3. But as good as Rico was, he wasn't Ric Flair, whose legacy as one of the industry's greatest of all time had been firmly established long before he returned to WWE in late 2001. After a run as kayfabe WWE co-owner, the Nature Boy became an active competitor once again as a member of the Raw roster. 6 days before he was due to challenge soon-to-be Intercontinental Champion Chris Jericho at Unforgiven, Flair kicked off Raw in a match against Rico. One would think that this would be a relatively easy warm-up for Slick Rick, but he ended up tasting defeat after Rico blasted him with a spinning karate kick. There was no interference from Y2J to set it up either. Rico had tried to bring a chair in but was prevented from doing so, and after Flair mulled over using the steel weapon himself, Rico took advantage of the momentary lapse in concentration and scored a major upset. Flair tried to grab the rope and kicked out at 3.1, but a win is a win, and it looks so good to me. Number 6, Goldberg vs. Braun Strowman at WrestleMania 36. At Super Showdown 2020, Goldberg smashed through The Fiend to win the WWE Universal Championship, a booking decision that everyone universally agreed was the absolute best one available. Nobody was mad. The man was scheduled to defend and presumably drop his title against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 36. However, when the COVID-19 pandemic did a run-in, the big dog, who was worried about being immunocompromised after twice battling leukemia, pulled out of the match. WWE instead turned to Braun Strowman as Plan B. Considering he was just thrown in there as a challenger and had a rotten record when it came to Universal title matches, most people assumed the monster among men was doing the job so that Goldberg could properly drop the strap to Roman at a later date. But on the night, Braun not only beat Goldberg, but he beat him handily and cleanly to become the new champ. Goldberg had put some people over since his return, notably Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker, but it was still a shock to see Strowman, of all people, beat him clean. Braun's win made subsequent Goldberg losses against Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Reigns, and finally Gunther somewhat less shocking. Number 5, The Undertaker vs. Kama Mustafa on the June 16th, 1997 Raw. From the very get-go, few characters in WWE history were as protected as The Undertaker, who rarely ever lost and almost never lost cleanly. If you wanted to beat the Phenom, then you better call your friends to help or bash his head in with a blunt object or bury him alive or something, because the man was not going down without a fight. Unless he was wrestling his best mate, in which case a single Uranagi would do the job. On the June 16, 1997 episode of Raw, Taker, who was WWE champion at the time, was teaming with Ahmed Johnson against Farouk and Kama Mustafa in what was Charles Wright's first WWE match since the 1996 Royal Rumble, which he entered as Kama the Supreme Fighting Machine. The story was that Taker didn't have the chance to tag out as Ahmed was beefing with Paul Bearer at ringside, but that doesn't disguise the fact that Kama fairly beat him up and pinned him with relative ease. I guess when you're BSK for life, Mark Calloway is happy to stare at the ceiling for you, unless you're naked Midian, in which case you simply must put on a pair of pants. Number 4, Bret Hart vs. Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10. At WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart was focused on regaining the WWE title when he met the winner of Yokozuna vs. Lex Luger in the show's main event. But before he got there, however, the Hitman had a little bit of family business to attend to. Namely, whooping his younger brother Owen's ass in the show's opener. The jealous Rocket had famously kicked his elder sibling's leg out of his leg and was determined to show that he wasn't just as good, but even better than the best there is, was, and ever will be. Given that Bret was a former WWE champion challenging for the title later that night, and Owen had to this point been an entertaining mid-carder without much of a push, all signs pointed to the excellence of execution getting his hand raised on the grandest stage. But in a shocking outcome, Owen cleverly countered his brother's victory roll and walked out the winner. It was a tremendous finish to a tremendous match and did much to raise Owen's stock, setting him up nicely for a WWE title program with Bret a few months down the line. Number 3, Brock Lesnar vs. Chris Benoit at Survivor Series 2003. In the fall of 2003, Brock Lesnar was, shall we say, on one? The reigning WWE champion had been on a real tear, brutalizing the likes of Paul London, Brian Kendrick, and Zach Gowen, while claiming big victories over Kurt Angle and The Undertaker. Needless to say, he looked dominant. Heading into the Survivor Series, the next big thing was flanked by 4 other pretty big things in the shape of The Big Show, A-Train, Matt Morgan, and Nathan Jones. With such an imposing squad of beef boys by his side, it seemed unlikely that Lesnar would be in any danger of losing to the team of Kurt Angle, John Cena, Bradshaw, Hardcore Holly, and Chris Benoit. But in the end, it got down to Brock and Show against Cena and Benoit, when, almost out of nowhere, the Rabid Wolverine slapped on the Crippler Crossface and made the champ tap out. This was shocking for many reasons. 1. Lesnar wasn't even the final man. 2. He tapped out. And 3. He tapped out to Benoit, who may have been an excellent and popular wrestler in his own right, but was by no means a main eventer at that time. Number 2. Hulk Hogan versus Kurt Angle at King of the Ring 2002. Hulk Hogan had made a career out of that not working for him, brother, but when he returned to WWE in 2002, the Hulkster wasn't in as strong as a position to call the shots, and had to put some people over. Doing the honors for The Rock at WrestleMania X8 wasn't such a huge shock, and really, few remembered or even cared about the results since Hogan was as over as he'd ever been, and the crowd were in the palm of his hand the entire time. But after that reaction turned him back babyface and a nostalgia run as undisputed champion flopped, Vince McMahon decided that the best use of Hogan would be for him to give the rub to the next generation of stars, which included the imperious Kurt Angle, who avoided the leg drop of doom and made Hogan tap out to the ankle lock right there in the center of the ring at the 2002 King of the Ring. The Olympic hero was a main event player and former WWE champion in his own right, yes, but witnessing Hulk not only lose clean, but actually tap out for the first time ever was truly a shocking sight to see, dude. And number 1, Randy Orton versus Kofi Kingston on the January 13th, 2014 Raw. Kofi Kingston famously scored a clean pin on Randy Orton at the 2009 Survivor Series pay-per-view, the start of a big push that never really came to fruition because of reasons that are stupid. Stupid! But when Orton and Kofi clashed on the January 13th, 2014 episode of Raw, the Viper was the WWE World Heavyweight Champion gearing up for a Royal Rumble showdown with John Cena, while Kingston was aimlessly drifting as a jobber to the stars. The two had their usual match, with Randy controlling large portions of it with his trusty chinlock. If you were a betting man, you'd have put money on Orton hitting an RKO and securing a momentum-boosting win on the road to the Rumble. And this is why I'm not a betting man, because Kofi somehow managed to evade an elevated DDT and hit an SOS to pin the champ clean. No banana peels, no distractions, no interference. Kingston simply out-wrestled Randy and got his shoulders flat on the mat for the 3 count. Not bad going for a man whose previous televised match was a loss to Damien Sandow on Main Event.